And those can virtually hear me. Okay, do I come clearly? Mark B2. I see you joined.
It's a little bit hard to hear, Rich.
Okay. Let's try.
It just maybe just make it a little bit louder or get closer to a mic or something.
Yeah, is this a little bit better?
Still about the same.
Maybe,
Volume's up.
okay, and it's up. Is that a little bit better? Smart.
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Okay. Great. Looks like there's a few more people virtually joining. And I'm right about the Mark, can you still hear me okay? Is it?
Yeah.
still-
Yeah, I can hear you.
Pretty clear, great, okay. And I can hear you.
We just had a comment. It's very hard to hear.
Like I just have my volume turned all the way up, Rich, but
Yeah, those participants.
It was off that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's hardwired.
So if you're participating virtually, the suggestion is to turn up your volume all the way if you have not already. And goes without saying, I think that'll be helpful. And I think we'll go ahead and begin, except for I don't want that to be too. Yeah, on our end.
Can you get the out closer to the no? Well, so we have to be hardwired into the wall in this room. Okay. Everybody that can see, just write me.
It's a big room and owls work better in small rooms, but we'll try this. I think. Mark, can you indicate whether that sounds better? The owl is a little closer to me now, but picks up the volume.
it's still a little hard to hear, Rich. But when Sarah got close to the owl, I could hear her pretty clearly.
Do you want to come sit over here?
Yeah, I'm just gonna move my location a little bit so we can get closer. Okay, let's try this again. Am I any clearer now?
Yeah, you're a little bit louder now, Rich.
Okay, great. I think it was the owl. Okay, wonderful. Well, it is right now 3:04, and we're going to begin our medical cannabis market analysis input meeting. So good afternoon. My name is Rich Oborn. I'm the director of the Center for Medical Cannabis at the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. And it's Wednesday, September 1st, 2022, and I'll be conducting this public meeting. Who's joining this meeting virtually? Please make sure you are on mute unless you're making a comment during the public comment portion of this meeting. I'll share more information about virtually submitting comments regarding the market analysis later on in this meeting. We've scheduled this meeting to last between 2 and 5, or between 3 and 5 p.m. And so we'll set aside that time. There's plenty of time for public comment for those that want to share their thoughts either virtually or in person. So I wanted to go through the objectives of this meeting. The first is just to do some brief introductions. And like I said earlier, my name is Rich Oborn. I'm the director for the Center for Medical Cannabis at the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. And there may be some representatives from the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food that join us a little bit later. If they do, I'll make sure we introduce them at that time. And we also have some staff from the Department of Health and Human Services helping in administrative support of this meeting. Sarah Lalos is helping also with Sarah Ponce. And then we've got Danielle Collins taking the minutes for the Department of Health and Human Services. And we have other staff in attendance. Jesse Hockley, he's our data analyst, and also Jeremiah Smith, and our policy coordinator. And I think that is our staff. Oh, and Amanda, she's our database software administrator. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to begin by just emphasizing the purpose of this meeting. It's for the Center for Medical Cannabis to share some general information with the public about the market analysis. It is doing our presentation will include a review of some of the factors that the Department of Health and Human Services is required to consider with the Department of Agriculture and Food and the public as it conducts the market analysis and considers the possibility of issuing additional medical cannabis pharmacy licenses. To receive informal or to receive one of the other purposes of the meeting is to receive initial formal input for public comment from the public regarding the market analysis that we are beginning. We're beginning it. Here's some thoughts we have. Let's give an opportunity for public comment. Just a few public housekeeping items is and also Brandon Forsyth with the Department of Agriculture and Food. He's the lab director over there and oversees the division of medical cannabis and hemp. He's joined the meeting as well and is available to answer questions as they come up. And we want to emphasize that the Department of Health and Human Services is consulting with the Department of Agriculture and Food as we are consulting also with the industry and public as we conduct the analysis. This public meeting is held in compliance with the Utah Public Meetings Act, and it is being audio recorded. The meeting minutes will be posted on the Utah Public Meeting website. That is at utah.gov/PMN as in public meeting. Public notice website. Okay. And a copy of the PowerPoint presentation shared at this meeting may be found at the Utah Public Notice website. The department is accepting public comments made verbally regarding the market analysis during today's meeting, and we'll be accepting those comments at medical cannabis. Written comments, actually, we'll be accepting written comments at our email address at medicalcannabis.utah.gov. If you choose to submit an email after this meeting, you're certainly welcome to, and just make sure that that email has the subject line of medical cannabis market analysis input to make it obvious the purpose of that, and we'll make sure it's considered along with all the other comments that we'll receive. Individuals may also submit public comments to the department via regular mail, and in our address is 195 North, 1950 West, Salt Lake City, Utah, 416. Attention medical cannabis. And if you do submit something via mail, then just make sure paper that you submit that you clearly mark it as medical cannabis market analysis input in the subject at the top, and that way we can know what it needs for. Written comments must be received by 5 p.m. on Fridays. Google Meet meeting in your profile. If it doesn't, make sure you send us an email to let us know what it shows up under so we can make sure we accurately reflect those making comments and those joining the meeting. It's also possible to participate in the meeting over the phone, and with the phone number, if we have anybody that has done that, you can just send an email to medicalcannabis@utah.gov and use the last 4 digits of your phone number in that email and your name, and that way we can accurately record your joining of the SPELT meeting. Okay, so I want to shift now to the background and purpose of the Utah cannabis market analysis. Also, I wanted to emphasize, I'll begin with the presentation and then your public comments can be made after my presentation. So there, as I present at the beginning, it'll be me presenting information that we're considering as we began this. And then after that, I'll clearly say when the public comment period begins. And at that point, then you would be welcome to be recognized. And we'll start with the in-person comments, and then after that, we'll go to virtual. That's just the later part. And for that.
Can we pause? They're saying it's very garbled. Can we try to turn off the microphone and just see if the owl will pick up enough?
Okay. Thanks for letting us know. Hopefully this is a little bit better. Okay, so let's go to background and purpose of the Utah medical cannabis market analysis. Gladly, my voice hopefully is loud enough for everybody here, and there's not too many people, so that's good for people in person. Okay, so we wanted to make sure we are in compliance with Utah law. Can you go back to the slide prior? There we are. So complying with Utah law means that the Department of Health and Human Services shall conduct an annual analysis of current and anticipated market for medical cannabis. That's what we're here for. The annual market analysis is to be used by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food to determine if additional cannabis pharmacy licenses are needed in Utah. The department is to consult with the public and hold a public meeting as part of that analysis. And we'll be submitting this market analysis as required by Utah law to the Utah Legislative Executive Appropriations Committee. And we anticipate that we'll publish it by the end of November 2022. And that gives you the background and purpose of this market analysis and why we're here. So there is a list of factors set forth in Utah, an administrative rule that we've already established in the rule that states what the Department of Health and Human Services may consider as factors when determining if additional medical cannabis pharmacy licenses should be issued. That rule is R380-406-20. It's Utah Administrative Code. It's not in the statute that a legislator would, or a bill that would pass. It's administrative rule. The legislature has granted the Department of Health and Human Services the authority to write this particular rule. It's already in place. So that rule specifies the factors that are mentioned here. So there are 5 factors. The first of which is high potential for growth, number of medical cannabis cardholders located in 1 or more regions, access to medical cannabis home delivery service in the state or in certain economic regions, commuting patterns and economic activity in specific regions, and also distance for medical cannabis patients or potential medical cannabis patients residing in certain economic regions of the state from their home to the nearest medical cannabis pharmacy location. Also, there is the need to include in our market analysis any evidence of an inadequate supply, quality, or variety of medical cannabis. That was such a big issue that we felt like it was important that we separate that from this initial meeting. And so we'll be bringing that up in the future
and getting input from the public on that specific topic. A lot of these factors are related, as you know, but if possible, we'd like to reserve that specific topic for a future meeting when we'll be sharing additional data with the group. And everyone will have an opportunity to comment on the department's consideration of that factor as well. So that will not be the focus of this meeting today. Our focus will be those other factors that were mentioned earlier. Okay. One of the most important concepts we felt strongly about as we started was that the Kim C. Gardner Policy Institute, University of Utah, has put together a map of what they call Utah's economic regions. And this map has the regions represented here that are being presented. And you can see it has a main city that acts as kind of the main population center of each of the economic regions. And you can learn more if you go to the Kim C. Gardner Policy Institute's website. You can track this down, just Google it. It's relatively easy to find. And if you have trouble finding it, I'm happy to share it. And there's a lot of factors that went into identifying these economic regions. And it was based on commuting patterns and economic activity. And we felt like it was a good division of different economic regions that we could apply to needs that we have here in the Utah's medical cannabis industry. I'll do this a little bit later on. I just wanted to introduce this at this point to make sure people were aware of how we separate things according to economic regions at this point as we started the market analysis. Thanks. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now we're beginning to talk about some of the specific factors. So what I would call factor one is the high potential for growth of medical cannabis card holders in one or more regions of the state. So if we take a step back and we take a look at card holder growth from the beginning of the program and where the program will go in the future, based on projections and trends that we have with help from our team here at the Department of Health and Human Services, this graph represents where we think the industry will go in Utah. Right now, we're at 56,000 card holders, and that represents about 1.7% of total state population. And analysis that we did comparing Utah to 12 other medical only states. And when I say 12, we know there's more than 12 medical only states, but we had data only from a certain number of those, 12. So I think there's about 17 or 18 medical only states with varying degrees of programs they allow, right? This analysis only took a look at 12, I want to emphasize. So the average is 1.5% when you consider all of those. And there's some outliers like Oklahoma that are much different. If any of you know Oklahoma's program, it's very different than other programs as far as things go. But Utah ranks 5th of the 12 states and highest percentage of card holders to total population in that group of 12. And if the current growth trend continues, there would be 90,000 card holders by the end of July 2023. That would represent a 2.8% of state total population. And we anticipate that is going to happen. That's what the trend shows, and you're welcome to show different, either as representatives of your company or the association, we'd be welcome to take a look at those as well. But this just shows in a very general way where we see the cardholder growth growing in the future as a state. And also just as a reminder, in the public comment portion, it might be helpful if you were to state your public comment when you do that, to state the factor that you're wanting to comment on. You can make general comments as well, but it's sometimes helpful to have that specific to one of the factors. So an additional data set that's helpful as we assess the high potential for growth is that relates to factor one as well, as just patient purchases per month. So of the 56,000 patients in the program, about 29,000 patients made between 3 and 5 purchases per month. In August 2022, there were 58% of patients made at least one purchase, and 21% made. August, 81% of patients made 3 or more purchases. 14% made 10 or more purchases. The last, and when it's in the table that's represented there, when it says the last 3 months, that's meaning June, July, and August of 2022. And when it says last month, that's meaning August of 2022. Okay. So also let's move to another sub-factor of high potential for growth is just patients by economic region. This shares with the group how those split up on that topic. And one thing I wanted to share with the group is we ran some numbers just prior to this meeting that compared percentages of cardholder number to population of specific economic regions. So what is being presented on the slide is of patients in the program. Here's what percentage of those patients are in the greater Salt Lake region, who are in Utah Basin region, who are East Central, West Central, Southwest, and Southeast. Okay, and that's helpful to know, and it's not surprising how those break out to greater Salt Lake mostly. But one thing that's interesting as well is if we run the number of the cardholder, the percentage of cardholder to population in specific economic regions. If we go to Greater Salt Lake, there's 12 counties in Greater Salt Lake, and that represents 2.8 million in the 20. Jesse, this is the 2010 population or the 2010? Okay, so based on that, there's 1.67% of the population of the Greater Salt Lake region has a medical cannabis card. Okay, so that is the highest percentage of population of a specific county to the number of cardholders. And then if we go next to East Central, so East Central, that includes 1.4 percentage of patients. And then we go to Southwest, that includes, of course, St. George and other cities there. We're at 1.6%, 1.16. And then there's a dramatic difference between those three and the other regions, the other three regions. So if we go to West Central, and if we go to Una Basin, and if we go to Southeast, those are much lower in percentage of cardholders to total population of those regions. Southeast is at 0.33%, Una Basin is at 0.58%, and West Central is at 0.73%. So you could say that this is a factor that we would consider when identifying those counties that have a high potential for growth of medical cannabis cardholders in those regions that have a much lower percentage. And the information that I just shared, that'll be available as a handout after this meeting on our website. So take a look, and I'm just reading from an analysis that I received today. So hopefully that's helpful. Great. Okay, so we're gonna move on to access to delivery. So this represents currently which pharmacies, the number of pharmacies delivering to each county in the map. So you'll see that Davis County has 3 medical cannabis pharmacies who we've authorized to deliver to that county. And then that is the dark green. And then you've got number of counties in that general Salt Lake region of Box Elder, Tooele, Salt Lake, Utah County, Morgan, Weber, Cache. Those are all counties that have 2 companies delivering to those counties based on what we gathered in the data. And then there are those that have only 1 medical cannabis pharmacy delivering. And then there are those counties where there aren't any medical cannabis pharmacies, to our understanding, delivering. And so that just shares what I explained. So there's those different groups that we've noticed as we group different counties and economic regions together. So that is certainly relevant to the access to medical cannabis home delivery service in the state. Great. Okay, let's move on. And this just reminds the group about factor 3, commuting patterns and economic activity. So again, is that Utah's economic regions, according to the Kim C. Gardner Institute, that hopefully the group finds helpful, that's helpful to the department, different groups. Okay. And then we've got average distance to a medical cannabis pharmacy by economic region. Now, this initial preliminary analysis was just based upon distance measured by as the crow flies. So this is not actual driving distance. We plan on doing some analysis with help from our friends at Google to do some of that driving distance analysis. But I think you'd find a similar trend in the driving distance that Southeast region has the longest average distance to the nearest medical cannabis pharmacy at 110 miles. And obviously, crow flies is always going to be shorter than your actual driving. So that's important to keep in mind. And then Greater Salt Lake, East Central, and Southwest regions have the shortest average distance nearest to the medical cannabis pharmacy is represented in that map. So that's just factor 4, driving distance for patients or potential patients residing in certain economic regions of the state. Okay, let's move on to that. Okay, so there's a ratio of retail locations to total state population. This just compares Utah to 17 states with medical-only programs. Utah ranks 13th in the lowest ratio of retail location to total population, with a ratio of 1 retail location for every 238,000 residents. Oklahoma ranks first with 1,600 residents. It's important to consider that Oklahoma prohibits home delivery. Cannabis was legalized there in 2018, but in any state where you prohibit home delivery, it makes sense to have a lot of retail locations. South Dakota ranks 2nd with 1 retail location for every 9,900 residents, and Florida has the highest ratio with 1 retail location for every 990,000. Okay, so I just bring this up because I think it's an additional factor that is worthy of considering. Next slide. Ratio of retail locations to total state square miles. So of the 17 states with medical-only programs, Utah ranks 14th in the lowest ratio of retail location to square total state mileage, with a ratio of 1 retail location for every 6,000 square miles. Utah ranks first Oklahoma ranks first with 1 retail location for every 29 square miles. Maryland ranks second, and then Iowa ranks last. Okay, so I believe that concludes our the Department of Health and Human Services kickoff presentation regarding the medical cannabis market analysis input. And I think right now we'll open the hearing up for public comments. If you have written comments that you would like to submit at this meeting, you can do that. Just submit them to our policy coordinator, Jeremiah Sniffen. Jeremiah, raise your hand. For those here in person, you're welcome to give those to Jeremiah. And we know interested parties feel strongly about their comments, and that's a good thing, but this is just a reminder to be respectful and courteous in your comments. Please limit your comments to factors that the Department of Health and Human Services is considering as it determines if additional medical cannabis pharmacy licenses should be considered or should be issued. You're welcome to suggest additional factors beyond those introduced in this presentation. We know that the statute and the rule do not limit the factors. We just mentioned ones that we felt like were important to consider in the rule, and we just shared those. So keep that in mind. There are microphones placed on.
Let's not do microphones.
We are not going to do microphones because those don't work well for the virtual group. What we will do is I'll just go ahead and recognize you. We'll have those participating in person share their comments first. If you have those, just raise your hand. Did we have some indicate on the sign-in sheet, Danielle? And we don't have too many people here, but I know that there's likely some that do want to make sure. So again, we're going to begin by getting public comment from those attending in person first, and then we'll shift to those participating virtually. We want to make sure that we do have time for everyone. So if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes each, that would be helpful. And great. So we do have 2 individuals that have indicated interest in making comments. And my suggestion would be, as you make the comment, to come near the owl, because the owl can pick up your audio. Scott Erickson, representative of the industry. Scott, would you come forward, and we will ensure that your audio is picked up. And that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So just first, name, all that. Scott Erickson, Utah Cannabis Co-op and Standard Wellness. I just want to first thank the department for going through this process. To provide opportunity for industry and patients to be able to provide input and insight on what's going on. So based on the initial data that Rich presented, the growth of patients, the ratio to the population, the ratio to square miles, it's apparent that at some point in the near future in the program, that additional pharmacies are going to be. Doesn't mean it's tomorrow, doesn't mean it's next year, but there will at some point need to be additional pharmacies. One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind through this process is it takes time to get pharmacies up and running. Based on the initial RFP, it took, some were 6 months, some were closer to a year and a half. With an RFP, it build out everything else. That takes a long time. So being ahead of this so that pharmacies can open when it's needed for patients, rather than starting the process when those numbers are needed, I think is important and something the state can look forward to rather than be reactive. There are also numerous companies in the industry that have spent millions of dollars on infrastructure to help the state get the program up and running. The co-op believes that there should be extra consideration given for companies who have invested to help get the program up and running in the state, to try to create a even playing field for companies that are here. For the industry to be successful long-term, companies need to have some control of their supply and some control of their distribution. Doesn't mean that it's the same for everybody, but the best opportunity for companies to reduce costs for patients is when they can control their own costs and they have a guaranteed source for their retail location to sell their product. And I think there are a lot of factors in here that play to that, as far as the percentage of the population of the patients in the Salt Lake region is 90%. That has 73% of the pharmacies. Now, that's not to say that there shouldn't be pharmacies other places, but if we have 90% of the patients in one location, we should probably have more pharmacies in that location to serve those patients. We're also only in the middle. We're at the median of highest percentage cardholders of population. We're not higher than other places, but we beat expectations in the state. When the initial projections came out for patients in Utah, we have beat those projections every time with patient growth in Utah. And so we'd encourage this to move forward. We'll submit additional data as well, but we want to take the opportunity to talk about these factors. So thanks for your time.
Great, thanks, Scott. Christine Stenquist. And she is a cannabis advocate with Truce.
I would also like to thank the health department for doing this and putting this together, because it was a really clean presentation and really showed where we are as patients. And if the goal and the objective is to have more legal patients in the program, we do have to look at having dispensaries sooner rather than later. But I would caution the state, and I'm glad that the ag department is here, because it doesn't do us any good opening up access points if we are not actually getting product that patients need in those dispensaries. So we're not growing to scale yet. And that's what we need. We need consistency and we need quality products that are hitting those shelves. So while I'm all for expanding the program, and it's obvious that we need it. And yes, we do need more dispensaries here in Salt Lake County, but our rural counties are not being served. And if we leave it only up to industry to do that, they're never going to serve those patients. And the whole goal and the objective of this program, the whole reason why Truce and many of the patients got involved in fighting, is for safe legal access. And we need to make that possible. Under Prop 2, we would have had a dispensary in every county. In Salt Lake, we would have had up to 6 dispensaries. So I would like us to get to that objective. So 15 dispensaries is completely inadequate for where we are and our growth. So I am start the processing now, because it is going to take time for those dispensaries to come online. So thank you again, and I look forward to more conversations. Okay.
Great, Christine. Okay, is there anyone else who is here in person that would like to make a comment? Great, Alyssa is a representative of Utah Cannabis Association, and go ahead.
Alyssa Smales, Utah Cannabis Association. Thank you, Rich, for putting this together. I know it's no small task to gather this data. The factors that have been listed for consideration have great merit and paint a broad picture of accessibility to medical cannabis in various communities across our state. We would like to see these factors evaluated through analytical methodology, and I know that you went through that piece by piece, but we just kind of want to see it a little bit deeper to see the formulas that were used to get to the things that you got to.
Okay.
The position of the UCA is that the factors considered need analytical backing to support the decision to create a new license. The UCA does not oppose the creation of new licenses, and we're eager for the opportunity to help provide as much access as possible to patients in Utah. We do feel the process by which new licenses are considered needs to be analytical and predictable. A factor that we feel like wasn't considered, we believe active patient count and the corresponding trend of negative patient growth we saw last month are some of the most critical factors in determining the need for new licenses. Active patient count has generally proven to be the most trusted metric in other states' need for new licenses and looks to be the best way to determine a need for new licenses in Utah. By having a measure in place, it allows us to analyze active patient counts in each geographical area. We are eliminating all arbitrary speculation and creating a concrete approach to view the need for more licenses. As a precursor to creating more licenses, members of the UCA see a need to focus on ancillary barriers, creating a lack of access for patients in our current medicinal marketplace. QMP caps the cost of obtaining patient cards and the frequency by which a patient is required to renew his or her card are inhibiting patients from being able to acquire and retain their medical cards in the current program. If we could remove the barriers preventing patients from accessing medicine, the number of patients will increase, showing an indisputable need for more products and licenses.
Great. Thank you. Other individuals attending in person that like to make a comment? In person? Okay. Great. We're going to now shift over to those online, and I've asked Sarah Lelos with our staff to help manage that. So Sarah, go ahead and recognize those that may have raised their hand, or actually no one's raised their hand.
Just now.
Oh, just down, okay.
Clinton Young was the first.
And as a reminder, after you make your comment, or while you make your comment, state your name and if you have an affiliation with a company, and also at the end, make sure you mute yourself. Great.
Hi, my name's Clinton Young. I'm from Vernal, Utah, in the Uinta Basin. This is something I've anticipated for some time and have been following for years. Out here, it's extremely difficult to find a QMP. The nearest one is located in Altona, Utah. They don't accept insurance, and their costs are reasonable according to the standards set by the state, which still means they're prohibitive. There are those that do accept insurance, but are at the closest one I have found is 154 miles away, and over 2 hours and 40-minute drive. That's going through a few canyons on the way. Many of them are closed throughout much of the year and perpetually under construction. So that adds at least an additional $100 to the cost to get there, plus the cost of meals and food while you're out there. To have to make this on a frequent basis is, as I've said before, prohibitive. That's going to be a familiar word today. Many people in our area honestly don't get cards. They drive the 40 minutes to Colorado to go to Dinosaur and get the product they need, usually at better prices, better variety, better quality. It's much easier all the way around. I know of at least 5 individuals in my area who don't have cards because they can't afford to get them. I know at one point I spent 6 hours trying to locate a provider within the state. One of them wanted me, even though I was at the 6-month mark of renewal, they wanted me to start all the way over at the 1 month mark, back when that was a thing, and then to 3 and then to 6. All of them want an in-person first interview. So that adds to that price further. Let's see, just a minute, son. Also, I've stated a few times about the ratio to square miles. That's less effective given that more of us would use it if we had access, if we could afford to both the QMP costs, the cost of the product, and the cost of travel. I've had quite the time being shuffled back and forth between senators, the Health and Human Services Office, various industry professionals, and back again, also going to the various patient organizations. One of the most frustrating. Okay.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Next, we have Desiree Hennessy. Oh,
I guess maybe now we have Drew Reese, please.
No, can you hear me?
And now we
It was-
can. Go ahead.
I think my internet is a little bit slow. I'm Desiree Hennessy. I'm with the Utah Patients Coalition. We're a patients group here in Utah that passed Prop 2. And I just first wanted to say thanks to Rich for the data and the slides. I think it's important to see the map and see that there are patients in Utah that are getting underserved. And as a patients group, of course, we're always concerned about access. And, as patients grow, we're going to need more of that. And issuing licenses is a way to do that. One thing, I guess my frustration is since this program began, even during the Prop 2 time, they were always asking, where did our ask for a pharmacy in every county come from? And from then to now, I've been saying, can we get some good data to say why we would need those? Like, we have a licensing board for the cultivation licenses to say, hey, this is how much cultivation we need. Can we do the same for the pharmacies? Issuing a rural license for a pharmacy is great, but can they keep their lights on? I mean, what is the data with this? Do we have enough supply? I know we've had supply problems, and that looks like it's going to be ending soon. We hope. I mean, that's what we're projecting in the next 6 to 9 months, or maybe it's sooner. Somebody else can answer that. But right now, we're also struggling with patient retention. We lost a lot of patients, and we're not losing a lot of medical cannabis users. So what do we need to do to keep those patients in the program so we can expand and not hurt the program as we do it? Again, I think that there's always going to be this fight if we need more licenses or if we are fine with where we are. But until we can come up with this really good, clear data, which I think is totally possible, there's going to be this fight over and over. So, and I think that unfortunately right now, supply and demand, we're not having as much demand as we should, and we need to fix that problem first. If we're losing patients, let's figure out why, and still try to do this in a way that doesn't underserve those patients in those other places that are not having any access to medical cannabis. And that is all.
Thank you. Drew Reese, you're next.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Drew Reese. I'm a State Veteran Caucus Chair. I'm also a Truce board member. And I just have a few statements. First of all, I would like to double what everyone has said so far. So, I'll edit those comments since they've already been said. But opening up more dispensaries is important. But on top of that, we need to make sure that we have the reliability and the consistency of product for the dispensaries we already have. I'm a veteran. I'm a cancer survivor. I live both with PTSD and chronic pain. And I rely on having the consistency of products, both the vape carts and the topicals, and the edibles. Once you find a product that really works, it will sometimes be out for months at a time. I personally prefer having more sativa dominant products to use during the daytime, but sometimes all that the dispensaries have to offer is the indica hybrids, which kill my productivity for the day. So, you're faced with a choice. Do I medicate or do I stay productive? And that's just because we don't have reliability of product. We need to upscale our entire program to meet the needs of the patients, both with licenses across the entire program, from growing to manufacturing to distributing. And this will ease many of the problems. Creating more product will also bring down price to more realistic levels. As a disabled vet on a fixed income, obtaining medicine from state dispensaries sometimes accounts for 45% of my monthly income. And that's just not sustainable. And I know I'm not the only one in that situation. And then again, what's already been talked about is distance. For a lot of our veterans being rural, we're talking as the crow flies, sometimes they're only able to go within miles of their home. So when we're talking give or take 100 miles here, 100 miles there, it's really being not really taken into account the actual patient situation that many are going through. And with that, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Zach King.
Hi, my name is Zach King. I've been a medical cannabis patient for about 25 years. And I'm so grateful for the program that we do have. We have some accessibility. Unfortunately, about 10 years ago, my wife passed away from Ambien and a reaction with that. And if we would have had the full access to our 4 ounces of flower and 20 grams of concentrate, I think she would still be here. And I also know that my quality of life would be vastly improved. And so I think for me, the biggest struggle that I have is true safe access to this program. We're told that we can have an allotment of 4 ounces of flower and 20 grams of concentrate, and it's just insurmountable compared to my mortgage and so many other bills that we have. So if we could take the criminality out of being a patient and get it to the point to where we can actually afford our medicine daily or on any time that we need it, that would be ideal. And as far as I can see, it's a beautiful situation that we do have. But we really need to keep pushing, and I'm grateful for all the hard work that so many people put in. But it's just not quite enough for so many people. I struggle with chronic fatigue daily, and if, like how Drew said, if we had more sativas or more cultivars and more individuals that were providing these flowers and these concentrates at solventless solutions, and utilizing the COAs more effectively and more transparency for patients so that we can know what we're consuming, whether it's organic or whether they use any kind of synthetics or pesticides, and just to realize what we're putting inside of our bodies and to get to where the plant is leading us, not profits, not any special interests, but the reality is that people are receiving the help they deserve. And all your hard work will pay off. So thank you so much, everybody. I do appreciate all your hard work, and I yield my time, and thank you so much.
Thank you. That's the last person that has their hand raised.
Okay. Thanks to everybody for your comments, and wanted to well, it appears that those attending in person and virtually have no additional oral public comments at this point regarding the market analysis. Again, as a reminder, written comments can be emailed to medicalcannabis@utah.gov with the medical cannabis market input in the title, so we can make sure it gets into the right spot. Those can also be mailed to the address shared earlier in this meeting via regular mail. And the deadline for submitting written comments is at 5 p.m. on Friday, September 16th, 2022. So it is now 3:54, and this public meeting is now concluded. Thanks, everybody. Oh, is there another comment?
I'd like to ask real quick, Richard, are you
Sure.
guys going to be doing more market analysis of different parts of the program? Are we going to be evaluating the QMP portion? Are we going to be evaluating the ag department portion? Are all of those going to be up to, and is there a deadline on when you're likely to get those achieved?
So the market analysis has specific purpose specified in the statute as to what we were to consider.
Okay.
And it includes, in addition to those factors we've discussed,
Okay.
things that we haven't talked too much about, but that have come up in comments, include the quality of the product, the access of the product, and what was the other one? Supply, quality, and variety. Okay, so those topics have come up, but we haven't shared data about those topics yet with the group. Parties are welcome to, in their comments, share with us their thoughts about analyzing that as well. Now, although we will consider also including an evaluation of the QMP market as well. We'll consider including that. It's beyond the scope that's statutorily set, but law doesn't require that we limit our scope to what that is. I think lawmakers, we've already engaged and provide them data regarding medical providers and the proportion of those in certain areas. We've already shared that. We can include that in the market analysis. That's easy to do. Although it doesn't, it may, the question would be what impact on the number of medical cannabis pharmacies
Because
that's something that we would have to evaluate and see how it's actually relevant to the bigger question of the number of medical cannabis pharmacies that would be appropriate for the market.
to Desiree's point, we are seeing an exit of patients, and I think you need to address that concern before you think about dispensaries opening up. And it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation.
Sure.
Where if you don't have enough access points, patients can't get into the program. If you have too high of a barrier with the QMP program, as far as the cost being too high to get a permission slip to use a dispensary, that is also going to be a reason why patients refuse to renew their card and exit the program. So I guess
Sure.
my question is to everybody, is the goal and the purpose of our state to have legal access for patients? If that is the objective, then we would want to ramp up everything. It is a chicken and the egg. If you make a dispensary accessible, you're going to see a rise in patients in that area because now they have access. It's an actual opportunity. If you don't provide that opportunity, you're going to only have a few players who are making money off of those few patients. And so, you know what? The state is going to lose because patients will have spoken enough to each other to say, leave the program. It's not worth it. That's already what's been going on for the first 2 years. I don't want to see that continue to happen. What we want is a real fun program.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, QMP needs to be looked at. Those patient caps, they need to be looked at. All of this dovetails into each other. You can't look at one thing and not think it doesn't have a ripple effect.
Yep, I think I agree with you there. There's a lot of different factors that impact someone's access to the program. And QMP is one of the many issues, and price as well, quality, and
Because we do need that testing
Sure.
over so the people who are growing this product, it can get onto the shelves quicker.
right.
So patients want to buy it when it's fresh and it's good and you're not going to have them complaining that
Sure.
it's bad quality product. You know what? There is good product being grown here, but when it sits, degrades, waiting to be tested, that's problematic for the patients and for industry. So there's a lot of different market analysis things we need to continue looking at.
Sure, I'll consult with the I'll consult with the Department of Agriculture on that as well, because they're over.
Excuse me. I'd like to make a comment. My name is Zach Chase. I'm on the phones and I never got a chance to share anything or address the group, if that's okay.
Sure, could you state your name again?
My name is Zachary Chase and I am a patient in the cannabis program here. I live in northern Utah. I just wanted to share something. I know you said you concluded, but I wanted to share just that I'm glad you are looking at this. I hear that you're going to look at the data, and that is awesome. We want more data. That's always beautiful because we need the data to see what the real story is, besides just people's emotional feelings. But it is emotional. These people are my family. They're my friends that are not involved in this program because it's too difficult. And I mean that, whether it's QMPs, why did we ever need QMPs and all these crazy fees when I've lived in Nevada, California, Colorado? And yes, their programs aren't perfect, but we need easier access in order to give these patients what they need, which is healing that is natural, that doesn't kill them. I've been an addict. I've suffered from the abuse of opioids, which I inflicted on myself, and I finally was able to quit. I was able to stop puking my guts out from anorexia, bulimia every day. People can't wait to get this medicine. And there's so many things that are not in alignment. People are growing. People are leaving the state in an industry that is supposed to be the beehive state. Oh, we need more time to get it better. Well, let's get to work. For crying out loud, we're better than this. People don't know how to access your website. People don't know how to go through the process of QMPs. It is very difficult. There's not enough of them. These are just some of the things. People are growing moldy weed. Why wouldn't someone grow their own? Grab a book. We've been using it for 13,000 years and no one's died from this plant. We need to wake up and do something different. I'm Zach, and thank you for your time.
Great.
We get a lot of those, Rich, and we have a lot of patients that are frustrated because they fought so hard for this program.
Sure.
They really do want industry to be here, and a lot of us have engaged with industry, and they're like, hey, we got our hands tied in some areas too. So I think this is a situation of balance of the scale, of where regulators and legislators, industry, and patient advocacy need to really have an honest conversation about what is the objective in our state. Is it for that quarterly report to be in the black for industry, or is it for patients to have access? Because I was under the impression this was a patient program. So that's what I would like to see us really strive.
Sure. I want to emphasize there are a lot of factors. It is a program that was created for patients to be able to access medical cannabis legally in a safe way such that they can not do it on their own, but they can also involve assistance from a pharmacist and from a medical practitioner that's done some training, that understands how this product could interact with medications they're already taking. And everybody doesn't have that training. I think it's important that we recognize that this law was intended.
That training, though, Rich. If we're waiting for that training to happen, we're going to be waiting for it to happen.
Okay.
We're not there.
No,
yet.
that's, every physician can go and get the training beyond what the minimum we require. And there's just a few points. Let's close up the public comment portion right
One
now.
more raised hand.
Oh, or we got one more raised hand.
It's Drew Reese again. Go ahead, Drew.
Drew,
Hi,
are you
thank you. One more.
a new concept, or is this something that's already been brought up?
It's to add with what we're talking about, but if you'd like to
It's
close,
just
I'll just.
repeat of what we've already talked about, then if you could
I'll
write
amen
that.
to what Christine was just saying,
Great.
and let you conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay. And just a few things that I want to emphasize is that we understand that there are a lot of providers in the state of Utah that may be thinking about recommending medical cannabis, but don't know a lot about it. They may be waiting for the federal law to change. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's at a stage where it's closer than it ever has been. It just takes time, of course, with the federal legislation, how it happens with the U.S. Senate and everything. But what I want to emphasize is that there are some tools that have been implemented already that are growing, that are helping the program. We've noticed that the use of our medical cannabis visit website has tripled within
I'm sharing it.
since.
A lot of people-
Wonderful, right? Wonderful idea. Does any other state provide that? I'm just saying those states that have limits on the number of, on caps, do they provide a medical cannabis visit website where patients can compare prices? No, that isn't something I've seen. Utah we have at least one solution that isn't being used in other states that's being used now that we're excited about, right? And we've noticed the use of that has tripled. Wonderful. People can see which providers accept insurance. Now we understand, as was brought up earlier by Clinton, in rural areas, it is still difficult. A second important tool that was brought up was during the last legislative session, or earlier, but it began this year in 2022, is allowing any MD, DO, APRN, or PA to recommend to up to 15 patients. Now, we would hope that that would be more utilized than it currently is. And so there's some education we plan on doing, some outreach that I think will begin the conversation with those that have never jumped into the program, that we want to at least learn about it, to have that opportunity if they have one. And the public comment period is over at this point, but I just felt like it was important that we name some of the things that the program, with help from lawmakers in the industry and patients, have already taken action on. I know that the cost is often a barrier to individuals when they try to afford medical cannabis, especially for low-income individuals that are used to lower prices, right? That's been an issue that's come up in the past. And I know that there are some alternatives. Nonprofit organizations have stepped up to provide an opportunity for individuals to apply to receive a subsidy to help them afford medical cannabis. And
But if you can't get into the program because of the card barrier, then the subsidy program for the select few isn't really that the large portion.
Okay, so there's a lot of factors.
There.
The medical cannabis card, I think, is something where it does require meeting with a qualified medical provider, and that is a core part of the medical cannabis program, is that they meet with that provider. Now, if an individual is having trouble online or online applying for a medical cannabis card. We have staff at our office that are available to walk people through it. Medical clinics have stepped up to offer some of that assistance as well. And we know that there are a lot of softwares out there that aren't user-friendly. Ours, we are working to improve, but everybody's used other softwares and other industries that have their quirks and their gaps. And we want to ensure that we're not just sitting and being happy with what we have, but we're constantly making improvements.
They had a long history of being a bad vendor, so.
Okay,
I'm
let's,
still hoping to talk about these issues, but if we want to
Right.
expand, we're talking about dispensary, you can't ignore the other things. You're setting yourself up.
I'm saying that there's a lot of factors.
Agree.
And
And
so
that's
that's
what I'm
why we're talking about some of those factors today, and we'll talk about more later. And it's an important topic for us all to consider together, and there's not just one solution. So I felt it was important that we emphasize some of the solutions that were not mentioned earlier in the meeting. And I just found it interesting. They didn't even come up, unfortunately. I hope that people realize those solutions are out there, and maybe we can educate and outreach about those a little bit more so we can ensure people know what avenues exist currently, knowing that additional avenues may be created in the future with legislative action or whatever opportunities I think could exist with additional ideas that haven't been implemented yet, but may be helpful to patients as they try to overcome some of the barriers.
It would be really supportive of the you are of this program. Do an awareness campaign. We see the Loxton campaign out there all over the state. We have support in that
Sure.
arena.
Let's talk more about it. And we do need to close the meeting, and I do appreciate your comments. I do want to meet up.
I thought we scheduled to 5, so I was making sure that the public got the full amount of their time.
Well, Christine.
Point of
you have
order.
to share your comments, and we want to make sure you do have that. There are certain purposes
Point of
for which
order.
this meeting. Just a moment, can I finish? There are certain purposes for which this meeting was set up. And we've talked about the factors that the Department of Health is considering. And we want to try to limit our discussion as much as possible to those factors, knowing that there will be additional opportunities to talk about all of these other factors that are complex, that are important to listen to and talk through between regulator, industry, and patient advocates. We want to talk through them. That's just, we want to be prepared with information and data as we discuss those things, and not just have comments made that I think are helpful that we want to work through, but we need to also research things on our end to make it a constructive meeting. And so we plan on doing that in the future, and we'll engage with you and other parties in that discussion. But I do thank the group for the meeting, and there was, I think, a request, a point of order question potentially by someone that was joining. We've got another hand raised, and sorry, I thought we were
Yes,
done,
I
and
was
then
the
now
one
we've
who
got
made the
another way. And if it's a new top issue related to our purpose today, please share it. Drew?
Well, my statement is that this is a public meeting that's been set aside for 2 hours and open to public comment. So if there's still comment from the public, we should keep it open for the 2 hours that we posted, both in public notice as well as what's the official timeline, until that 2 hours is either gone through or no one has anything else to say.
And Drew, I
Since
think
this is
we
a
were
public
about to-
meeting, we should have.
Yeah, Drew, I agree.
Well-
I want to see there's hands raised virtually, and it looks like Alicia. Are there others besides Alicia? So I think we entered a portion of our meeting where there weren't any additional comments, and then we were closing, and then there was suddenly an interest in keeping it up, and we've given that opportunity, and we found there's a lot of different factors that impact this topic in general about the medical cannabis program. And we want to make sure that as the state of Utah holds this, that we're prepared with information regarding the topics that come up. And there's specific topics that have come up that weren't a part of our presentation. And we feel like it's best if we keep the purpose of the meeting to those things that we were planning on bringing up, specifically the factors that were mentioned earlier, right? And then, like I said earlier, we'll bring up other factors in the future that are very important for us to consider. We agree with patient advocates.
And it's a great opportunity to hear the factors that you may not have considered yet or heard from.
Sure.
Because many times the shareholders that you're hearing are from a small select part of either industry or state lawmakers or whatnot. So these public meetings offer opportunity to hear things you may not have considered. So just allow opportunity. If people still have things to say, the meeting's not coming to a close yet. We still have another 50 so minutes, and let's hear what has to be said until 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Drew, I thought we were done with comments and then they started coming up again. So here we are, right? So Alicia, you've raised your hand. Let's listen to what you have to share if you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
I'm going to come off mute for a second. This is Zach Chase again. If this were the old times, we would meet with a medicine man or woman in the group, and maybe they would listen to what our remedies were.
We've recognized
so
Alicia.
thank you for Drew
You're
for
welcome to
recognizing
make
that.
another comment. Alicia.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. My name's Alicia Christensen. I am with the Truce community, and I help and represent patients find their way. And recently, there has been some major issues when it comes to pricing. A lot of these patients are very frustrated about the pricing. Price for a card, a price to re-up our card. Every so often, the prices that we have to pay at the dispensaries for our medicine. My dad specifically, he's on a fixed income of so much money every month. I got him his card. He has done wonderful on his medical cannabis, but he cannot afford it now. So now he's sitting, he can't get his medical cannabis. He says, screw this program. He's done. And he's not the only one. There's so many patients. We're losing here. Pricing needs to be dealt with. That's the biggest issue we have. Everybody's worried about getting dispensaries and making sure that quality is great. And yeah, that's all wonderful. But the problem is this whole thing is going to go to crap if we don't deal with pricing. This is the biggest issue we have. Ask any patient. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alicia. Any additional comments virtually or in the room? Okay, great. So it appears that there are no additional oral public comments regarding the market analysis to make this time. And so we'll close the meeting. But again, written comments, you're able to submit those to our email address at medicalcannabis@utah.gov, or you can mail them. And the deadline for those regarding this market analysis topic is 5 p.m. on Friday, September 16th, 2022. Thanks again, everybody. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to participate in the meeting. And we'll close the meeting this time. Take care.
Wait, one more thing.
Go for it, man. As long as they can hear you, I can hear you still, unless you concluded the meeting. But we should still have the ability to speak.
I believe they just let the meeting go without a. But anyways,
Yeah,
Desiree, if you're still in line, thank you for what you said as well. And for the work you do. I know I don't give you enough credit, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.